Hello, and welcome to the Mother Birth Podcast, where we navigate the terrains of women's health and maternal well-being through the lens of yoga therapy and Ayurveda. I am Eugene Matullo, and I'm a perinatal yoga therapist, a doula, writer, creative entrepreneur, teacher, and mother. I'll be your guide as we excavate the mysteries of conscious conception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, mothering in all its forms, and matters of the feminine. I'm so glad that you're here. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mother Birth Podcast. My name is Leanne, and this time I have a very special guest joining me to speak, and that is my husband and my best friend. You are my best friend. I think all the relationship gurus tell you that that's not okay, but it is true. My best friend, my partner.
PSE, partner in crime.
Oh, partner in crime.
But we don't have much crime. There's not a whole lot of crime that's happening.
It's the father of my children, our children. Oh, and we just made a joke that we might have to pause this at some point if one of our children comes downstairs or if one of our children wakes up. This is kind of actually our date to be talking to you all. And what we're going to be talking about tonight, we think, as per usual, there is not an agenda. Eugene has not received questions. Did I share what your name was? This is Eugene Matullo.
Didn't actually say what my name was yet. So I was kind of just waiting on the edge of my seat for, okay, am I going to introduce my name or are you actually going to say it? What's the strategy here?
Yeah, we're agendalists, and so we're just going to talk. And really what I wanted to bring to this conversation is the male perspective, the partner perspective, and to really talk about what is the birth partner. But I have a feeling we might actually veer into other areas of partnership around pregnancy and birth and postpartum. And, you know, I have to be honest, as I've had people request this conversation between you and I.
Oh, really?
Really.
People wanted to hear us and they wanted to hear me speak about.
From you. I think they want to hear from you, especially about birth and like, what the hell does a man do or a partner do in the
sit there and pray everything goes well?
That's not true, but when their partner is in labor. So yeah. So welcome to Mother Birth. You're my first guest. You're probably gonna be my only guest this season. We'll see. I'd like to do more interviews, but I feel like there's so much to say. So we'll also preface and probably say that this episode will be a bit longer than maybe the other ones that I've done, the solo cast that I've done, because there's so much here. And
unless I completely just blank out and just can't think of anything to say.
Eugene said there's no questions, or you're just going to carry the conversation. I said, do you know me? Like, do you know your wife?
Do you know that dead air is not the most appealing thing for people?
Oh, that's not going to happen. So. Anyway, the big thing that I feel like I've maybe witnessed is there was such a, and of course there would be, but there was such a big difference in how you showed up for the first baby, and I mean specifically the labor and the birth experience, which, let me be clear, Eugene was there for the entire labor. Like, he didn't go anywhere. I think the energy was just different, right? And the confidence was different. And to the second labor and birth experience, there was definitely, and of course there would be. And I think, you know, as somebody who has attended births and attended settings where partners come together to prepare for birth, there is this sense of a lot of times the partner kind of backing off, whether that's from a lack of confidence or thinking, okay, this is a woman's issue, you know, birth is like a woman's thing. I'm not quite sure, but I really will say that for both of them, you were very present, but the energy was really different. So I feel like, you know, let's just dive in. Okay. Let's just dive into questions. So, but they're like,
I'll say before you even start asking anything. So like, knowing that we're going to be talking about this, I've sort of started playing the conversation in my head about like the things I wanted to say. And every time I did that, I swear like different things came up. So I have no idea where this is gonna go, just to go there.
Yeah,
Um, but ask away.
ask away. Well, I'm curious, in the first, maybe I'll learn something too, but in the first pregnancy, what did you expect your role to be? And then maybe like what actually happened in the labor and birth experience? You don't have to tell our birth story necessarily. I'm not really asking you to tell the story of how Bodhi was born. But I would really love to hear like what you thought and then juxtaposing that with what actually was the case in the first labor and birth.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
No, I definitely remember. I think part of it was I didn't know what to think in the first one. I had no barometer for what this would be like. I had no idea what to expect. And even, I read a couple books. We did a childbirth education class together. I think a lot of my education prior to, the birth itself was through you and your knowledge base. You coming to me and say, "Hey, I really think I want a doula, and can we talk about that?" And so, for me, it was, at that time being in the space to be like, I think I was already at a place where I was like, absolutely, this is your body. Whatever you think is going to support you the most, I'm all ears in that. And so, of course, I want to hear about what a doula is. And at the time, maybe I didn't know what that was. Um, and then even,
What did happen when I came in and said, "Hey, I want a home birth. I think I want a
yeah,
home birth."
I was gonna get to that. And then, the next part is like obviously you have done so much work in this space and research on the different models of care and outcomes for the mothers and the babies themselves, depending on whichever route you decide to go. So so after the doula, it was then actually I'm really thinking about a home birth where me at the time, I think initially I definitely paused because I felt fear from the beginning. I don't want to get too mushy, but
From the beginning. Oh, go ahead. Go
no,
get
no, no,
mushy
no,
for a
no,
second.
we talk a lot about this, and I look at you as like our goddess, right? So I would never want anything to happen to you. I would never want anything to happen to the babies. So, I think naturally there is fear around this process in general. Does it need to be there? I don't know. That's probably a bigger conversation. Um,
Really?
because
You had fear
I did, of
for
course. I'm a
both?
human being. Yes, Leanne.
Well,
I have fear. I'm not I am not a robot.
no, I know, but we didn't really talk about like
Sure, we
we talked
didn't
about maybe like some of the fears, but like we didn't really talk
not
that about you being
well, so
afraid.
me being afraid of if something were to happen, because again, I had no barometer for this. I did
Mm-hmm.
not know what to expect the first time, even though I felt like I did read, I did read up on things. Of course, I had asked women in my life who have had kids about the experience. Excuse me. And, sometimes I think that, when we talk to our parents, it's everything's,
Amnesia.
yeah, there's a little bit of that potentially, but maybe not. Um, and so, yeah, there was certainly fear going back to the home birth piece, but again, I didn't I it wasn't so much so that I was so unconsciously and vehemently absolute against it right away.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed obviously I had a reaction to it initially, but quickly I came to feel like, well, hold up, this is something you need to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, again, you shared about the research and the data and the fact that this is a natural physiological process that never used to have Western intervention in the way that it
Mm-hmm.
exists today, and actually, fairly recent, in
Sure.
our history. So, um,
Mm.
and so I was open to it. And then when you said that, we're also looking at a Mennonite midwife for the
Let's
home,
just
but
go
we're
completely out
we're
of the
completely
system.
out of the system. that was, of course, again, another just moment of pause. But I trusted in you. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to serve you and your needs and
Mm-hmm.
support you. And I was open to all of that. So um, I think, we talk a lot about, and you and I have had these conversations a lot about what does it mean to be a birth partner, and just in general in a relationship. I could take this back so much further than where does partner even begin? Like, how do you start to begin to be sort of a conscious partner?
Mm-hmm.
And not to go way back into my own history, I feel like part of me being so open to this was because I began my own self-study and exploration a few years prior to that,
Mm-hmm.
when I really started questioning my own belief systems
Mm-hmm.
internally, when I started questioning some of my own family trauma, when I started questioning some of my own behavioral patterns. And, these are things you and I have certainly talked about. But I feel like before the birth happened, our relationship really began to evolve and blossom into something that was so much more deeper than two people existing in a space together and passing each other,
Mm-hmm.
through our day. And that really started with the exploration of myself from the inside out. And I know,
Mm-hmm.
if you're listening to this, you've probably heard stuff like that a million times. But for me and my experience, that is the reality. So, I certainly fell in love with yoga too. There was a period where, I don't, depending on who's listening to this, you may or may not know this. I became a yoga teacher through your program, and there was a piece of yoga that I absolutely fell in love with to start, and now it's sort of the entire philosophy and system that is
Mm-hmm.
yoga. So, the the growth factor for me was in this idea now that I am here to serve. And that starts with serving myself first on a mental, a physical, and emotional level, and then
Mm-hmm.
what transformed into such a deep spiritual level. And so that practice was solidified inside of me as an individual. And through that, it's almost hard. I don't know. It's sort of like hard to say how it happens, but you can start to see and feel other people and their needs a lot easier. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just feel like this natural frequency that I sort of tuned into within me really helped me really helped me sort of look through a different lens to be able to see you in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of what
Well,
I
to be
was
able just to see
and to
me,
see,
right?
right? A lot of what I was missing before because of my own ridiculous patterns and whatever. And to see other people too, and to
Mm-hmm.
feel like the feeling of energy, and at the time not necessarily know what to do with a lot of that, depending on where it was. Um, and so yeah, it was that I think really, really transformed my approach to what it meant to
Mm-hmm.
be a partner when it came to the birth. I
Yeah.
certainly think just me being the person I am, I like for the first birth, I certainly would have been there for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it would have been as intentional if I hadn't done all of the
Sure.
space before. If you and
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't started to
You mean
connect.
like you wouldn't have accidentally been cracking jokes during my labor, which he never did. So, but that's like a very common thing in labor is the
Well,
partner tries to like lighten the mood, and that's really not necessarily what's needed. And you never did that.
no, I think so. You start like I was saying, like there's this connection, this feeling of I'm in tune to what you need, and in this moment, it's not for me to sort of be,
Mm-hmm.
funny or whatever it might be. You actually need me to stand strong now and
Mm-hmm.
hold you and hold space for what you need, which
Mm-hmm.
is which was a which was something that I did not necessarily do in the past. That was
Yeah.
that was cultivated.
A lot of times we try to fill the space as
Right.
individuals rather than actually hold it, which is really different. So I just, can I pause you? Is that okay?
You can pause me whenever because I'll just keep going on and
It's Eugene
on.
solo cast, actually. Well, one of the things that you shared was about this like know the self like first before really being able to know others. And like that's the whole essence of yoga, right? Is like we really can't actually help others like we think we can unless we actually know how to help ourselves. So one of the examples that I'm just thinking of even recently, I'm a mentor. I'm on faculty now, which is super exciting for yoga therapy school. And just yesterday, somebody was talking about how one of their clients had this intention of like, I want to be desired, right? Like, I want to be desired. Like, I want someone to desire me. It's like the same thing, like this outward focus on like, I want to help other people. Well, neither one of those things can actually happen until you desire to know self, right? Until you can desire yourself. And so I actually didn't think that that's where this conversation was going, but it really is true. And so if you are like, well, my partner is not into yoga, like what would you say about that? Like if they're not on this track of, but now I'm pregnant, like what would you offer to them? Like they don't have to be in yoga, I'm assuming is into yoga is what you'll
No,
say. But what do you think about that?
I think it's having honest and real conversations about this massive transformational process that is happening and will further happen once birth and the baby gets here. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you don't practice yoga, that's totally, you know what I mean, that's not a deal breaker in terms of like diving into to how to truly, be the partner that your partner needs. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's everybody can grab a journal. You could start to write down some of your fears to really think
Mm-hmm.
about that. And like
Yeah.
you said, we want to fill space. A lot of times we don't want to hold space for those feelings to come through because they're really fucking uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as a man, and
Mm-hmm.
what we've been taught to believe, at least a lot of
That's a
us.
whole other conversation.
I know we're not going to go into that.
We're not going to go into toxic masculinity.
So
This is divine masculinity, though, right? Like knowing yourself
yeah,
and like being able to touch your own emotion, like that's a divine
sure.
masculinity quality. Yeah.
So I think like you can certainly start to write out if you have expectations, if you have thoughts, if you have feelings about this, and then be committed to share that with your partner. I think that
Mm-hmm.
that would be a really great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what probably happens to a lot of people is that we know this is going to be something new.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be likely challenging, life changing, and for whatever reason, we actually don't want to touch it. We sort of want to numb.
Mm-hmm.
We want to,
That's right.
you know what I mean, go through the process, but not actually think about it. So, and I think that's a major disservice to what's actually about to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it too as you're talking. Like if you're able to actually be really conscious from the beginning, like maybe you're thinking about becoming pregnant, right? Like this is the preconception, conscious conception journey, or maybe you actually are pregnant right now. Like having these conversations right now is going to make the transition for both the mother and her partner. It's going to be so much more, I don't want to say easy because it's not, but more easeful postpartum. It's not this like, okay, now we have a baby and we're going to get back to the life that we had before. When you can actually sit in this awareness and rather than numbing it all the way up until the point that a baby has come, I feel like we're going into some pretty like serious and real territory. Like if that happens and you're going to be able to be more present in all facets of your life and just really practically. I know you're talking about like anybody could get a journal, like anybody can go on a walk in nature by themselves. Anybody can open up a book, that's not like um that's like some sort of ancient wisdom text. Anybody can do that. Anybody can even just sit outside at night in silence. But you're right, I think that there is this constant numbing of what is actually coming up for us rather than learning to sit with it. And learning to sit with yourself and hold space for yourself really enables you to hold it and not fill it for other people. So the other thing too that was coming up as you were talking, and this goes back to like, what did you say when I shared the kind of birth that I was hoping to have, that like the kind of setting and the kind of experience that I really wanted in home birth was, we went on a journey and you were really there for all of it. So I have shared in the first couple episodes about my fertility journey, and you were able to really see some of the systems as they were and how they treated women and how they treated those who want to become pregnant And I feel like that also really opened your eyes. So you were really present at pretty much every session or every what do they call them? What are the meetings, visits,
Doctor's appointments.
appointments?
Oh my gosh.
I haven't been to a doc. That's another thing. Yeah, the appointments. You were present for every like infertility clinic appointment and visit. And when I switched providers and you really saw that. So I feel like that also led into you being able to be like, okay, this is what somebody actually needs when they're going through something that might be challenging or life shifting and changing, such as birth.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was there the entire time, and I witnessed and observed a lot of things that uh, I certainly do not agree with in terms of how you were treated. And the comment again that really stands out to me is the one doctor who said you were an interesting project, an interesting, and looked at you that way. And then the other one who said you would never conceive naturally. And so,
What about the one that said I wasn't going to get a medal for natural
yeah,
childbirth?
that
was
one,
later.
the very old white male doctor. Not saying that they're all like that. But
If you could have just seen my face.
Yeah. So I think seeing that process, and then what you did, you actually healed yourself in other ways, you know, through through practicing yoga therapy techniques, through other natural forms of medicine, acupuncture, meditation, breath work, healthy, nutritious food, the right kind of exercise, enough vitamin D, a lot of these things that lead to a healthy human being finding more joy, connecting with the spirit. And lo and behold, we actually were able to conceive naturally. So I think that process too certainly facilitated more of this like idea of Eugene being really open to a home birth, to Mennonite midwife, and having
to actually being present too in the prenatal process,
and to being present in the prenatal process, but to having the baby at home, not in a hospital, But I think to go all the way back to what you had initially asked me, where was I at and how was I feeling? There again, the first round there was so much uncertainty, and what I'll say was I was totally not prepared for the actual labor and the experience that that you as the birthing mother would be having, like the feelings and the sounds and whatever all of those moments, and not being able to really do much about it, feeling powerless as like your partner in some of those moments, even though I know I was present and I was doing a lot. And there was a lot of coaching and a lot of raspberries being blown for hours, so much so that my face was numb. And
I had a very long first labor. Yeah, but so okay, that's a really good point to say like I wasn't prepared, because in some ways you can never be fully prepared as the person who is birthing a baby and as the partner. In some ways, like you can know all the things and you still will never be completely prepared. I think that is such a misnomer of like, do all these things and then you will feel prepared for childbirth. Like there's no way. I think there's a misnomer of creating a birth plan. To be quite honest, I think birth intentions are really important. Like, what are my values and intentions? What are things that I do and don't wish to have? But to think that we're going to have something go to plan is absurd. And also the way that labor and birth is depicted in media, like that is also absurd. Like, I think there is I'm thinking of one scene that stands out in the sea of like movies and TV shows that was actually somewhat accurate. And it was like the last season of Outlander when Marsley had her baby. Did you see that? And I was like, yeah, like that is actually what can happen and what does happen. So what we often see as people who are pregnant and our partners is like somebody being wheeled into a hospital setting, right, in a wheelchair and like screaming their head off and like sweating, and typically like in a hospital gown on a bed,
Mm-hmm.
like face turning red, trying to push a baby out on their back. Or we see the like highly medicated person that goes in pretty early and gets, an epidural pretty early and like seems to have a really easeful experience because they can't feel anything. And both of those things can happen, but they are not the full spectrum of what labor and birth looks like. And oftentimes it's usually depicted that the partner or the man, the father doesn't know what to do. They're either not in the room or they fainted or
They're
like
sitting out in the
they're
hallway smoking a
sitting, oh
cigarette.
yeah, it's like Mad Men era. Or they're like, they just don't know what they feel helpless, like they just don't know what to do. And to go back to what you said, if I can really sit and be like, okay, like I am capable of tapping into what I need. So certainly I can be that energy of, again, not having to fill anything, but just really seeing and noticing my partner. That's really beautiful. I mean, I don't remember this, but I remember you saying it and then our doula in the first labor. So I labored for, what was it, like 24 hours at home, right? Like I had a really long labor at home. And then eventually we moved. My water had been broken for a really long time. And we did end up having our first baby in the hospital. And
And we had an amazing team there.
we had an
We
amazing
did.
team
Yeah, I
there.
think
Yeah.
we were blessed that night.
I also want to reiterate that there was no emergency situation with me going to the hospital. I feel like that's something with home birth that, oh my gosh, something went wrong. You had to go to the hospital. You needed to, no, I had a really long labor and my water had been broken really long. So, but the thing that I'm trying to point out here is that my labor was over a day. And so I was in over a day of unmedicated labor, like just natural labor. And we don't see what that actually looks like. We don't see what it sounds like. We don't see what expressions a woman or a birthing person makes. We don't see, them kind of dancing and moving back and forth literally between worlds. Like, what was that like for you? Because I know you had to have seen, like, she's not here right now. Like, she's here, but she's not here.
Yeah, it was, there was it was really clear, and I can still see it today actually. And there was a moment where um I actually took a picture of it because I
Mm-hmm.
felt like there was something transcendent happening between wherever you were. This is when you were in the birth tub, the first, I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about when we were at home with um when we were with the first one. And again, like I can't explain it. Like there's some sort of place that you went
Mm-hmm.
and there was like a massive I don't know, it just sounds crazy, like an energy thing happening. Um where yeah, it just to experience that, like, I feel like I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but like
Mm-hmm.
it sort of brings tears to my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And just like really that moment of embodied, like just um mother,
Mm-hmm.
the mother,
Mm-hmm.
which is a beautiful fucking thing. Um, and so, that just, speak again, not knowing, like you said, some of the things like I had to keep asking the doula and the midwife, like, is this normal?
Like some of the
Some of the
things I
things you were
was saying.
saying,
Yeah.
yeah. Is this what happens to women?
So
Is
everyone's gonna want to know, like, what was she saying? What was she saying? So don't tell everything, but like, what are some of the things that I said that you remember?
I mean, there's one really big thing.
Yeah.
I
We
don't
can
know if you
edit
want
it
me to
out if
share
you
it.
go ahead.
You kept saying you felt like you wanted to die.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We'll leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that leads me into my next
Well,
question.
I mean, again, someone who like I feel like I was and am so tapped into you.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what to do with that. Like my everything
Mm-hmm.
inside of me was saying to snatch you out of that tub and to like try and save you.
Yeah.
But I kept checking in. Everything's good with the baby. Mom's progressing okay.
Mm-hmm.
While Bodhi was a little malpositioned and you were having a
A
shitload.
little.
Okay, but like you were having a shitload of back labor, which was
Mm-hmm.
causing less rest between contractions, and your contractions were insanely faster the first one the
Mm-hmm.
whole time. Um, and you were very tired. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just,
You didn't want to say that just now.
no, I didn't. I didn't want to share that, but that is the truth. And that was the hardest moment for me. Um,
Because you couldn't
more,
pull me out of it.
no, and more so, even when we transferred to the hospital, like all of that, you know, and it was the moment where, yeah, I
The
didn't know
funny
what to
thing
think or
is,
to expect
yeah,
or what to do.
I have so many thoughts. The funny thing is I remember like as soon as I don't know why we didn't do this, and this is going into my birth story. As soon as I got out into daylight, I remember my contractions didn't feel so bad because we were inside. I was like laboring inside when I said that. But as soon
It's
as we
pretty
got outside, so just like a note for anyone who was laboring, I remember being like, oh wow, this doesn't like feel so bad. And I remember like getting to the hospital because my water broke first. So that doesn't always happen. Like in the movies, that does happen. That actually did happen with me. Eugene asked if I peed myself, and I was like, no, that is not what happened. But my water did break first, and there is technically a rule that if your water is broken for 18 to 20 hours, you want to start watching out for infection. But anyway, I remember getting into the hospital and like kind of cracking jokes with people about like they would ask me, about something like, could I feel something or something hurting? And I'd be like, yeah, I can't, like, no, like what I'm going through right now. But the difference, I think, in that statement that you said, and I want to be really clear that not everybody is going to feel that way. I really don't think that everybody will feel that way, is that typically a midwife, a doula will hear like, I feel like I'm dying, and not like I feel like I want to. Like I would rather take that avenue because what I'm going through is so intense right now. Excuse me. But I will say that what I wish I knew and what I wish a lot of partners knew is that if a woman is willing to surrender and yield, she will touch places in her labor and her birth that nobody talks about. And that's why I have this whole piece to my work called the birth portal. And it's really scary when you touch that and nobody knows what the hell you're talking about because it is this incredibly liminal space between life and death. And there's a whole story, like mythology that I talk about too. It's the story of Inanna, where you're like literally going like to the depths of the ocean to collect your baby and like nobody can come with you. And I think that was what was the scariest thing for me. And like I think for you, it was like you couldn't go with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like you couldn't go there with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so often you can hold me in that process, but you can't go with me. And I think that that's really important for any partner to know that this is going to be the journey of the mother and the baby, particularly if there's not intervention in a labor and in a birth. Intervention meaning there's not medical intervention, there's not pain medication or an epidural or, and even if there is some of those things towards the end of your labor and birth experience, it's very possible that you will feel this, and to know that like your only job as the birthing person is to truly surrender. Like that's something I know this isn't about me, but that I wish I would have known. And I feel like you actually did a really beautiful job of trying to help that process. Like I don't remember, even though I remember asking, like I remember people telling me that I was asking where you were whenever you weren't by my side, because apparently like you were my safety. Like that was you being near me, even though I was in the birth
I was only gone
pool
for 5 minutes out of that
to
whole
like get
process.
food or something.
Well, I hadn't eaten. They wanted
Eugene,
me to eat, and
a
I went
day.
over in a corner somewhere and tried to eat a popsicle, and then I came back. It was really quick. I couldn't eat the
Yeah.
popsicle. I didn't eat. I didn't care. So
Yeah,
they say you can go like 3 days without food, right?
I think
So I'm
so.
pretty sure I didn't care at that point.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember a time when you weren't there with me, but apparently when you weren't there, I was really aware of it.
oh.
So, I mean, I have so many questions. Were you expecting like the doula and the midwife, and we had a midwife's assistant, were you expecting them to have more of a role than they did, or were like what you expected actually happened? Like talk about that from a practical perspective
Yeah, that's a
too.
really good question. I think I was definitely expecting more from the midwife, and in from now sort of seeing how it's happened with two situations, in situation two births situations. Um, it, they during labor, they don't
They don't really hang out with
hang
you.
out with you that much. They're not doing a whole lot of coaching. The Mennonite midwife was sitting on our couch knitting, I think. And when she would check how far you were dilated, she'd write it in her little paper book and go sit back down and knit some more.
Baby, like
She
she
checked
had
the
a
bit, yeah.
Doppler,
Yeah, she checked, yeah, right, right. But
check the
she
heart
was like
tones.
the most chill human being in the world, like
I think I did remember her
stayed in the
like
other
hearing
room.
my like sounds or something and being like, oh, like tell her to go lower or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember somebody telling me that.
So, and you know, for the duel, I think it was a little challenging for me to sort of step back a little bit from my own attachment to partner because it has been you and I for so long.
Yeah.
And to trust that there's actually this other human being who's going to be here during this incredible time,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to be able to support you and me a little and nurture you
Mm-hmm.
and give you what you need and to trust that that could happen and be
Mm-hmm.
something that's real. I think it took me a little bit to get to that
Yeah.
point. Of our doula was amazing, and
Shout out to our
yeah,
doula.
and
Our first one. We'll talk about our second one
yeah,
too.
and so, but while we were in it, I think my expectation of sort of what the doula was doing, it seemed to be in alignment
Mm.
with what was happening at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I think that's really important to point out to people is like people think that their doctors, their OBGYNs, their midwives are going to be really present with them the entire time that they're laboring. And that is not true. Like that is not true. And it probably varies for home birth midwives. But for the most part, like those individuals are there to check certain measurements, heart tones and that the baby's not in distress. And, you can decline cervical checks and all that. But they're really there to catch the baby if you want them to catch the baby, right? Like they don't have to be the ones catching the baby depending on the setting. And that the doulas and the nurses, if you're in a hospital setting, those are the ones that are really with you. And doulas are the ones that are really trained to like hear you and see you and provide, that sense of comfort. And then in the first labor, we had the midwife's assistant, and she actually was there a lot. Like I remember her rubbing my feet and my shoulders. And that's really how labor should look, right?
She's dumping like a lot of water
Oh
on
yeah, we
me.
have pictures of
She
her.
was there a lot, a
Yeah.
lot of hands-on.
And then, also like just from a practical perspective, I don't know that I anticipated how much you would be supporting me with breath. Like we both knew breathing techniques for labor, but like for me, it kind of there were definitely points where that went out the window, and you were the one who was supporting me in that, right? Like you were the one. I mean, I know you talked about blowing raspberries and like doing like the horse lips, but it was you that were teaching that. So I'm reiterating that for anybody who's listening and it's like, how can my partner be supportive? Like teach them breath work, teach them like blowing raspberries and horse lips and some of Riti, like the inhale for 4, exhale for 4, like teach them these techniques that you're learning in your prenatal classes or in the work that we're doing together if you're one of the individuals I work with, because they can really help in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's some of the other things too, like even before that, like with massage and
Mm-hmm.
the reboso. So learning how
Mm-hmm.
to use the reboso and
Oh,
helping
yeah.
with that because that works some crazy magic that apparently really helps relieve a lot of stress on your body. So
Doulas can teach you how to
yeah.
use. You probably could look up things on YouTube about how to use a reboso, which is like a big scarf. And
Mhm.
okay, so let's like go into labor
Oh,
two,
okay.
baby number two. So in that one, I noticed that your energy was much different, and our baby was like, I don't want to say way overdue, but like she was really like we were 2 weeks past the due date.
Cooked her. She was well done.
Uma took her time, and she's still taking her time in a lot of ways. And I love that about her. And so I also chose to have home birth midwives. What do you think about that? Like, what were you thinking about second baby? Were you like, I'm not surprised? Were you upset? Were you cautious? Like, what were you
No,
thinking?
I actually was expecting it, and I don't think I would have wanted anything else,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's not to say that it's truly is to each their own. I think what's really important is to understand there are different ways to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and that is okay.
Right.
And it's really not any less safe,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is really important. And I think there is a misconception around that, a very
Mm-hmm.
big one. So I expected nothing other than that. And I probably would have been surprised, truthfully, if you would have said, we're gonna go right to the hospital for this one.
Yeah. And let's also like add into this that I was pregnant during 2021, which, if you don't know, was a weird year to be
Wait,
pregnant.
what was happening?
2021. And one of the things that was really important to us, and this is like, maybe you're listening to this far into the future, but for me, I don't care what's happening in the world. My partner needs to be present to what's
Yeah.
happening in this pregnancy. And my other child, needs to be present to what's happening. And so, one of the things, again, that I was really grateful was that we found, uh, when we went to get our ultrasound, we found a practitioner that allowed us both to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is something that I really want to offer is if somebody is saying like, no, it can only be you. You and I both felt very strongly like, then that's not
I'll
our
be
tech,
damned.
right? Like, because, ultrasounds, and with Bodhi, I didn't really get that many. With Uma, it was a little bit of a different story. Girl was breech at the end. So
Come on.
come on, Uma. But then she flipped back, so that was good. But ultrasounds are actually looking for what's wrong. And so if you are in that setting of like getting bad news by yourself, that can really affect your pregnancy and to not have somebody to lean on. So that was really important. And then you were present in a lot of the prenatals, and so was Bodhi.
Yeah.
And birth is sometimes, it becomes this like when we would share with people, oh, we are thinking about we're letting Bodhi decide. Does he want to be present for the birth or not? People were really kind of weirded out by that. Like, did you think about that at all? When we were planning for a home birth, were you like, oh, where's Bodhi gonna be? Like, do we want him in the room? Do we want him out of the room?
Yeah, I
Like, what
thought
was
about it
your
a little bit. I thought
expectation?
about it a little bit. I think just with the nature of Bodhi, I think that from our first experience, it's not that I don't think he would have been amazing or could have handled it. I
Mm-hmm.
just, his energy level and just sort of his nature in general. My only fear was like if that were to take away from me being able to serve you,
Yeah, yeah. So this
right?
is important to think about,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're thinking about
Because we
a home
also
birth.
didn't have a whole, I mean, we would have had a team at the house still. But I think it's different where maybe you see stories and the kids are present and they have a lot of other family there too
Mm-hmm.
that are like helping with
Right.
the kids or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that was sort of selfishly, again, my focus was really
I
how can
think
I
it's
be intentional and
yeah,
service oriented for you and your needs and present and
yeah.
not have to think about, is Bodhi getting fed? Does Bodhi
Mm-hmm.
should we just skip bath tonight? Is he gonna sleep? Is he not
Right.
gonna sleep? What's he doing? Is he causing you stress? You know what I
In
mean?
some ways, like thinking about how, my labor actually turned out, like sometimes I think that he would have actually like dissipated some of that
He
energy.
might
Like
have,
he
yeah.
and so we can talk about that in a moment. But the big thing I guess I'm thinking about from your perspective and mine is like if you have another child already and you're pregnant or thinking about becoming pregnant, like how do we start to include them in birth? Because, I think that we totally like this used to happen as family systems and we've totally like separated it out and it only got worse in the last few years. Like totally put the mother by herself or the birthing person by herself, except for maybe the labor in the birth, the delivery itself. So that's something that,
Well, do you remember what what happened with we had to go to the hospital once. Do you remember that? We had Bodhi with us.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had Bodhi with us. I was having it was at the time I had like vision problems or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, so I was having problems with my vision. I'm okay, but I was having problems with my vision and we took Bodhi with us because he is my child and he wasn't for whatever reason he wasn't in care that morning or we had to go somewhere. And again, we don't have family around here, so we took him with us and they wouldn't let him come with me
Yeah,
into the
we
emergency
got there
room.
and they said he couldn't come. He
And so
couldn't come in
they wouldn't admit me. And so we had to turn
with no,
around
with all of us,
with all
right?
of us, right?
You
They were like,
said you
you can
could
go
go in
yourself.
by
And I said
yourself,
no.
and I had to take in Bodhi and go do something, send him somewhere and come back,
Right. And
or
I
you
said
just had to
no.
stay there by yourself. And you said no, and I think we
Hmm.
ended up dropping him off and coming back together. But the point is like
And remember, at that point, I really
I was
needed,
also mad.
you were mad. I was
I
just thinking
yelled at the
that.
guy behind the
Well, and then I said,
behind
I
the
need you to
desk.
be
Yeah,
in this masculine space of
yeah,
holding and not
right.
in like anger, but in of like holding. Like I am
And you
not
checking me there
leaving.
was really important for
Hmm.
me because I think that set the tone for my approach moving forward too.
Yes.
That moment was
Yes.
really important. You saying, Eugene, I cannot have you
Hmm.
reacting in anger that way. But I
Hmm.
was pissed.
Yeah. Well, I was too. I was too, but that was the reality of the last few years. And just, well, to also say that's not supportive of birth. That's not supportive of a familial system, like I deserve to have my first child with me, and he deserved to also be there. And this is again saying like we don't need to continue to separate birth from our children, our babies. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Bodhi, I showed him some videos on YouTube. I think he thinks that all babies are born in water. Like birth pools. But but yeah, I think that again, as a birth partner, like maybe this is something that you haven't talked about yet. And so you could start to bring up some of these conversations of how are we including our child or other children in this experience, whether it looks like our situation, our story, or not. So, but yeah, I mean, to go into, so I had home birth midwives, and that didn't surprise you. And again, like home birth isn't the only way to go. Hospital births, birth centers, some people do free birth, but I really think you and your partner want to be somewhat on the same page. That way you can create this environment of safety. And the reality is for me, Uma went past her due date. She went, which is totally normal. And my midwife said nothing, but we went past 42 weeks.
Mhm.
And in Rhode Island, it's illegal to have a home birth with a licensed midwife because they could lose their license. I mean, you can have a home birth, you just wouldn't have a midwife
Is
with
it
you.
illegal?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's why I had to have her in the hospital if I wanted to have my midwife. If I didn't want to have my midwife, we could have had Uma here. But I did like our midwives and wanted them present. And so we ended up having to go to Landmark for her birth, the hospital for her birth. And I'm curious for you, like this time around, what was different as the birth partner? I mean, there's a lot of things we thought we were gonna have a home birth and that Bodhi was gonna be present and all these pieces. Um, but what was different this time without like going in again into my whole birth story? Like how did you feel like you showed up differently? What was different about the labor and the like I have a lot of beautiful memories actually. I don't want to go into all. I want you to take it away.
Well, in general, I was infinitely more prepared
Mm-hmm.
for what this process was, what it looked like, how you were,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, uh, as as a mother about to give birth for the second time. Um, Again, we had another amazing team, so I was feeling really great about our team. I think the big difference here was, like you said, we didn't have any moments at home really with the labor process because we couldn't with the team that we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so everything started in the hospital. And the place that we went was, again, I think we were really blessed to be in
Mm-hmm.
that space because initially we had a lot of freedom in
Mm-hmm.
in the room, and
They left us
left
alone.
us alone,
And you were comfortable with
and I
that,
was
right?
comfortable
Like
with
you
that.
knew like
Yeah,
midwife's not gonna be
sure.
here. Like
Right.
our doula, like we
Yeah.
didn't even ask her to come until much
Yeah.
later.
And and once the process started happening, I think just being in constant communication with you, tell me how you're
Hmm.
feeling, what's going on, where are we at, being able to stand strong in the space for you to lean on me, um, to again really just be more of I think, like sort of the lion figure,
Hmm.
if that makes sense, in that moment. So I actually did not feel at that point really, I don't think any fear for what
Hmm.
was happening. Um,
I was mad.
you were
I
mad,
didn't
yeah.
want to have the baby
No, you
again.
certainly didn't. But I mean, just in terms of the process, knowing we're about to have another baby again, knowing what we went through the first time, and
You were so much more like literally hands-on this
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Like I remember the beginning of my labor when like, you have more time in between contractions and they're not as intense. We were like watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, do you remember? And we were laughing.
Mhm.
And then I remember there was like, I don't remember how long into it, but I remember being like, yeah, we gotta turn this off. I think that was your like, okay, like
Yeah.
it's on. And I have this memory of like this is really practical, but this is why it's so important to also learn laboring techniques, not just for the birthing person and the mother, but for the partner. Is like I was sitting on a birth ball like over the bed and I would like have a contraction
Mhm.
and like it would be pretty intense and like lean over on the bed and you would be like either rubbing my back or my hips. And then I would sit back up and you were seated. I think you were in a chair behind me and I would like lean back
Yeah.
into you,
Yeah.
right? And like we did that dance for a while. And I remember like a nurse came in and was just like kind of coming to check
Mhm.
and she left again and I just remember like that being um one of the most
Yeah.
peaceful, I mean not peaceful because
Mhm.
you're contracting, but like one of the most beautiful parts of my labor was just being able to be like, okay, you can lean back because I as a human, as a woman, I have a hard time actually leaning into anyone. Like I have a hard time saying like, yeah, just like I need to be held in this. It's usually like the I got it. I don't want to be touched right now, like it's
Leanne, just let me hold you.
seriously,
Got you.
really, but truly, I think a lot of people that will be listening to this will identify with that. Like I've got it. I've always had it. It's me. I can handle it. And that what birth taught me was like, I don't have to have it. I need to be able to be supported and to allow myself to receive that support.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for me, the thing that really sticks out the most about birth too was the transition from when our midwife care had to shift
Hmm.
to the hospital care,
Hmm.
and just how like aware and jarring that was
Yeah.
when that
Yeah.
process had to happen.
Hmm.
Um, and at that point again, like those feelings of like, well, I feel like I can no longer support, uh and it feels like things start to move 100,000 miles an hour,
Hmm.
when the natural physiological process of birth doesn't typically happen like that, and not in that
Well,
environment.
yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too far into my story because a lot of Uma's story I'm holding pretty
Oh, okay.
pretty private. But I think part of that was when I was in the tub at the
Yeah.
hospital and all these people started to come in and that's really disruptive of the process. And I actually like don't remember anybody's faces. I just remember the energy shifted, but Eugene and our doula were really aware that all these people started coming in. And I think you wouldn't have known any different if you hadn't had been through some of the childbirth ed and the work that I do, but you were able to know the difference of like what is
Yeah, oh yeah. I
happening,
mean,
and
it
that's
shifted so
really
fast.
frustrating. And
Yeah.
then how do I as a partner help to bring
Bring you
my
back.
wife back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the challenge, is how do we
Hmm.
bring you back?
Hmm.
you know? So it's hard for me to continue on without sharing more of this story that you have not shared
I
with
don't
people
want to
yet.
share
So
all of
you
it.
don't have to.
I don't want to share all of it, but I think I just, from my perspective, again, you really do enter into labor land. So you're not in this world when you're laboring, but I definitely felt more of that holding confident energy that I would hope, you know, anybody who has a partner present would have. Not somebody who is like scared and timid and passing out and like constantly trying to crack jokes or like put music, just somebody who was like completely like really there to be like, I am here for this and I'm here for you and I'm here for this baby and that's it,
And you as an individual, maybe you don't want jokes. I'm sure there are people who want jokes, right?
yeah,
So you just
not usually, not at
maybe
certain, not
not.
at certain
All right,
points,
there's got to be
like
somebody out
shut
there
the
who's
F
like,
up, yeah.
just tell me a dad joke, you know? Um, Come on, I'm testing you. I'm
Yeah,
testing
sure.
you. If
If
this
that's
baby
you,
don't.
let us know. Yeah.
Um, but the other thing I'll say is that really stands out to me about owning the partner role in birth
Mhm.
is this is the one of the most important moments to be absolutely selfless.
Mhm. It's not about you.
It is not about you.
Mhm.
And I think that for, especially if the partner is a man, I think that our approach, and you can take this back generationally, is that we're cared for, we're served. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? We go work hard and then we get, we get served. Or if we're not doing well, you take care of us.
Mhm.
And again, this moment is like if you truly want to honor your partner and be there for them, it is selfless. You need to let go of the attachment to whatever you feel about you.
Mhm.
And it is truly about being there for them.
Yeah.
While it is your experience, this is a mother and this is a
Mhm.
baby who
Mhm.
are combined, who are united. And to help provide the best possible outcome requires surrender
Mhm.
into selflessness.
Mhm. Mhm. Did you hear that?
How
Everybody
do you get
hear
to that point?
that? Just listen to the first part of
Yeah,
the
this goes all the
episode.
way back to diving in from the beginning to you. The work is inside
Yeah.
as an individual,
Yeah.
you know?
So, yeah. So really, I mean, really practical too, like baby's born or baby's about to be born. What would you have thought about catching the baby? What do you think about catching the baby? Because I think the first time neither one of us caught the baby. The second time I was able to grab Uma and bring her up. But I think the midwife asked if you wanted to
She
catch the
asked me
baby
to,
the second
yeah.
time. Yeah.
In theory, I wanted to.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When it came to the moment, I was too nervous. I was afraid. I didn't want to hurt the baby. Yeah,
Oh,
I don't know. So I mean, it was amazing. Like I can see it so clearly. She was right there,
she was right there.
right there,
Yeah.
and beautiful little face. Midwife
Yeah.
was like, "All right, Eugene, you ready?" And I just was looking at her.
And so I reached
And
out.
then she realized I wasn't gonna do it. So then she said, "Okay, Leanne."
Which was awesome. So, okay, partners, you could catch the baby. Talk to your care providers and see you cut the cord for both babies.
Yep.
You did the delayed cord clamping. You didn't pass out.
No,
It's
I did not.
only your own blood.
I also didn't like bite it with my teeth either. I thought about that. Like, this is my moment for barbarian Eugene.
Total primal. No, you actually cut it. You did skin to skin with the baby. So I did skin to skin first for the first hour with both of them, hour plus, and let them nurse. And then you took the babies at some point and had your shirt off and were holding them,
all the snuggles.
all the snuggles. So like that's very practical way.
Mm-hmm.
What about home? What about at home? What are like some of the ways that you feel like you were helpful as the birth partner and baby number one, number two, and that other people might be helpful?
Cooking a lot.
Yeah.
Around the second time, I think I did a lot more of that, and I was more intentional about it.
Mm-hmm.
But also supporting the idea that like for 2 weeks, you need to be resting, healing,
Mm-hmm.
connecting with the baby, feeding the
Mm-hmm.
baby, resting, not moving a whole lot,
Laying
healing,
in bed.
laying in bed,
Not going for walks, not going to Target. Is that what you're saying?
not going, not walking up and down the stairs 15
Mm.
times every day. Um, we had some amazing coaching from uh, our
Our midwives?
midwives too,
Mm-hmm.
in that, um,
And our doula, who's also our postpartum
right, in our
doula.
doula,
Mm-hmm.
and just
She was also really great.
amazing, and just truly being there to nurture the mother and the healing needs after birth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is a really big one because I feel like there's so much emphasis placed on the birth itself, and then the baby comes and the the parents are so effing clueless of like, and they just expect like everything to kind of snap back to exactly how it was again, just with a baby in the house now. Everything's the same, it's just a baby here. And that's not true. And the reality is that the person who birthed a baby, they have a wound the size of a dinner plate on the inside of their body, right? Like where the placenta detaches, and they actually just birthed a baby through their body. So like life literally came through their body. And we don't honor the rest portion. And so for the first baby, I had nerve damage. So I couldn't walk very well. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't walk, so couldn't take walks around the block. Um, and so I don't know that I would have, well, I didn't know what I know now, but I did have a postpartum doula then, and she was really helpful. And so were you and it wasn't about like, it was never about money for you. We were like, yeah, like let's just pay for it, and let's be real. I had a yoga studio with the first baby. Like I wasn't making millions here.
What are you talking about? You weren't 7 pigs? Come on.
I think people have this like conception that like like studio owners like make all this money, and it was really like, I just want to say that because I think so often we're like, well, we don't have the money for that. We have the money for the stroller. We have the money for, all the gadgets and like the baby, wearing, not the baby wearing, but like the swings and the, all those things that go on a baby registry when really like we need help and the mother needs rest and she needs food, like really good food, she needs nourishment. And you never once said like that's too expensive. You were always so supportive of like, yeah, let's do it, we'll have a way to make it happen. And so after the first baby, we had a postpartum doula that came. You never thought it was weird that I wanted to encapsulate my placenta. Like you just never thought any of those. Any
No, why would that be weird? I mean, I was eating some of it while you were sleeping, so apparently it's really good for you. I'm just kidding. I didn't do that.
So yeah, and then and you really upheld that, and you scheduled time to be home. You didn't have a super long paternity leave, but you like made it work with like vacations and work from home. This was again
before
2017.
This was before people were really
remote.
And I actually fought pretty hard to have them let me work remotely for 3 months.
Yeah.
To continue to provide support because you couldn't walk.
I couldn't walk. Yeah. So that's also not like a typical thing that you can't walk after having a baby, but it was my reality. And so
I think what you're getting at, and this was something also I wanted to talk about, is to be in partnership is to be in union. It's like, how do we want the birth to go? How, whether it's the Western model of care, midwifery model of care, who's going to be there supporting us, but there's also a conversation about values that really needs to happen. And so when you're talking about how I never wavered in the cost for healing, right? For things that I believe would help support you, nurture you, heal you. This was a conversation about value
Yeah.
too, so I think that it's one thing, yes, to bring a human being into this world, as partners, but then to really consciously and intentionally have conversations about, okay, now what do we each value?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about parenting and how that's going to be?
Mm-hmm.
What is important to you postpartum?
Mm-hmm.
And is it a swing? Is it, you know what I mean? Like a
Right.
baby swing? Is it the
Yeah.
carrier? Is it this? Or is it um lactation consultants?
Mm-hmm.
Is it postpartum doulas? Is
Mm-hmm.
it some sort of
Yoga therapy.
yoga therapy? Is it, some sort of healing community
Mm.
mentorship, right? Like, just to throw that in there. But the point is, those things are so important for
Yeah.
the health of the mother,
Mm-hmm.
in my experience, what I've seen
Mm-hmm.
and what I've learned, and the health of the baby.
The
And when
health of
you
the baby too.
serve the mother, that baby's going to be so well off, at least in
Mm-hmm.
my experience, right? Um,
We have some really wonderful babies.
we do. And again, it's this whole idea of like, we're working towards values together.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if we value your healing, if we
Mm-hmm.
make that a priority, then I don't give a shit about cost.
Yeah.
Because what we do to heal you postpartum,
Mm-hmm.
that, and you say this, like, that's going to carry with you through life, right?
And through your children.
And through your
And through
children
your children.
and their children. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So, it's, again, we're talking about birth outcomes, how we want it to go. And then there's this huge piece about values, like, what do we value as a family? What are the values we want to raise our kids on?
Mm-hmm.
How do we want to parent? Are we going to be 50-50? What are our schedules going to look like with work? Like, there's whole other
Mm-hmm.
conversation that's happening now. And you and I have talked a lot
So
about
what we're
this.
really talking about is the partner. So not just the birth partner, just
Just partner.
partner.
Right. Yeah. So it goes way
But
before.
it does. But all this happens, all this can start to happen way before baby actually
Or maybe it
arrives.
doesn't. Maybe it's a catalyst for it
But
to
maybe it
happen,
is a
which could
catalyst
also be a really
too. You're
beautiful
saying it
thing.
can, or yeah, and it comes after. But yeah, and so with the second, with the second baby, just to go back to postpartum and to almost like synthesize what you were saying in our experience, you did have a much firmer understanding of, okay, this is what she needs. And I did have a different labor and a different birth experience. I did not have the same nerve damage, but you were very adamant about Leanne stays laying down. Leanne rests. We had made some freezer meals, or I had like, I'll do this, I'll cook that. No, we're not ordering pizza, family. Like just things like we have to nourish on so many levels. I'm sorry, you're about to say something. Go ahead.
You got this book, The First 40 Days. If
Yeah,
there's anybody out there,
you read it.
I read that book and I cooked so many meals out of that book.
They were so
Simple
good.
and delicious and
They're
nourishing.
so good. The first 40 days. But yeah, I think again, like when we're talking about birth partner, don't forget about postpartum partner, right? Like how is and it's not just the partner, because that would be a tremendous amount to put on you. I think what you did though was uphold, like you said, the values. And you also made sure that our family was taken care of. So we had some of my family and your family come up, that Bodhi had people to play with, whether it be our family or his friends, that he was being taken out to, the playground. That way I could really focus on healing, because birth is a tremendous, tremendous act and we need to honor it.
Yeah, and I think, this is our conversations about the birth partner, but I also witnessed our family step up differently too.
Yeah, the second.
The second one, in a really beautiful way. Truthfully, like helping keep the house picked up and getting groceries, and like, instead of just coming to hold the baby, and not that there's anything wrong with that, that helps too, but it was just a whole nother level of like, we're here to really care for you and your home and your family, so you can be and you can rest.
Right.
And so, I think a lot of this,
Thank you, family.
seriously, and we circle back to like, back in the day, like this process, it was community where there was family, there was friends, like everybody sort of helping out. And we're siloed in the way we all move around the country. Maybe not every family's like that, but and it makes it harder.
Yeah.
So the education from and the evolution from birth one with family was even noticeable with birth two with family, which was incredible. So don't, the other thing I'll say is, as a partner, maybe part of that is also having the conversation with your families.
Yeah.
When you guys come, whether it's when the baby's born or after the baby, here's what we really need. Truthfully, this is what's going to support us. And you shouldn't have to say why, but maybe you do, and you tell them why. And I think that could be something really, really special for you if you're listening to this, your family, or anybody you know.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, from my perspective, it's really healing for your family line too. So if your family hasn't had a history of being present either at birth or right after, which I would actually think there are many, many families that don't have this, if they're not usually present to that, and maybe if the expectation is they're really only there to hold the baby or to, like, have the mom take a shower, which is great and super helpful. But I think this act of, like, people don't have babies every day, like they might do this a couple times in their lifetime where they're coming in to hold the family in those first couple of weeks. I feel like that's incredibly healing for familial lines and systems and ancestry. And as one of my favorite teachers that Eugene hears me talk about all the time, uh, Rochelle Garcia Saliga, as she says, we're in a time of repair. So we may not see, like, the fruits of what we're doing and how we're approaching our pregnancies and our births and our postpartums. We might not see the fruits of that labor in our lifetime, but our children likely will, and their children likely will. And how absolutely incredible is that?
Amen.
Amen. Oh.
Jai Ma.
Jai Ma. That's right. Jai Ma. I have no idea how long we've been talking.
We've been spitting
Maybe
the old
an hour. I don't know. Eugene's looking at the time, and so am I. Is there anything that you want to close with? Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to say or to share?
Yeah. I think what I want to share is that if you are listening to this and you're about to go through this experience, or someone who is,
as a
partner, as someone who is maybe is pregnant or is thinking about getting pregnant, or who is even postpartum, if you're in that space, please do not discredit or take away the need for your care, your nurturing, your healing, your support. And as a partner, I think it's important to lean into that, to continue to serve in that way. And so whether that's saying, hey, let's think about how we can get you more support, whether that's a doula, postpartum care, yoga therapy, whatever it might be, to really foster healing. Because I know we've talked a lot about the body, but there's even so much more to that we haven't even touched on, which is like what's happening in the mind, what's happening in the heart, what's happening in the emotions, what's happening to the spirit, what's happening to the person that was before the person that now is. And there is so much transformation that's happening. And so you likely do need support. And don't just look at a price tag, because there are people who work really hard to want to serve you. And I'm looking at one of them right now. And I'm not just saying this, she really didn't. And I'm not just saying this to like funnel people to your work, but it really, I am so much more aware of this now when I see, when we have friends who are pregnant, or I hear about some of their stories, or even if I see, like a pregnant woman out and about, and I immediately have this moment where I'm like, I really hope that she feels supported and nurtured, and that her process is going to be amazing and everything she wants. And she's going to be able to get the healing path that she
That's
deserves.
right.
And so, like, I'm getting really emotional saying that because it's true. And so, if you're listening,
you are getting emotional.
Give yourself that. You deserve it. You fucking deserve it. And if you're the partner, you need to be telling that person they deserve it. If they bring a program to you and say, this program is
whatever
going to,
it is,
whatever it is, it could be anything and anyone, and it's going to support me in X, Y, and Z, and I really want to do it, say yes. Say yes, because all it's going to do is benefit. It's going to benefit the mother, it's going to benefit the baby, and it's going to benefit the family. And that's what I want to say. And I hope that if you hear this, it hits you, because that is the truth. You deserve it.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you.
Jama. Is that how you close things out?
No, I just kind of closed that out. Thank you all so much for listening to this conversation. I've so enjoyed having this conversation and sharing it with you and truly getting an hour uninterrupted to have maybe my third glass of wine this year. September.
Sip of wine.
I don't drink wine that often. But a little bit of wine and uninterrupted time to talk to you, my partner, and to really share this message. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Eugene. Thank you for listening. I'll put a few of the things that we talked about in the show notes, like the first 40 days, maybe the birth partner, some of the work that I do in the world when it comes to pregnancy and birth and postpartum. And we are both sending you all so much love. So much love.